This might just be the scariest thing that I've ever seen. That right there is my celestial twin, and he is going ham on something in the orbiter. Evidently he sees something that I don't. Good lord, what is your problem? Yeah, he's had enough of something. Like, what are you shooting? You know those awkward moments where, like, you see a dog just staring blankly into space, like at a blank hallway, and they're not wagging their tail, they're looking alert, like something's there. This is the feeling I'm getting right now. D, send help! Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all colors, ages, and sizes. I am Vance from the Warframe God Build series, and it is such a pleasure to welcome all of the godlies and all my fellow Warframe enthusiasts back to the show, because today we have a special build to cover. Not unlike the April Fool's joke, which was obviously an April Fool's joke, we're gonna get into some serious material, because today is a video that I'm gonna be doing in which I've never done before. I've never showcased a squad build, and I think that it's probably time to do that, because there's a lot of new players coming into Warframe and they have no idea what Raljack is all about. So let me break it down for you. This version of this video is going to be the first part of a two-part series. Raljack, I feel, is too large to be covered in just one video. Therefore, I'm going to put the essential video out first. I'm going to put the team intrinsics up and your rules within those intrinsics. So I'm going to teach you, the player, how to get into Raljack without actually having a ship of your own. So listen up, this video is going to be special. As I said at the very beginning of the video, I hope that everyone is having a splendid time despite the fact that COVID-19 is keeping us all inside, which this is the perfect time to launch a video like this, because while you're stuck inside, this is a great opportunity for you to get into Warframe and start grinding out what you're going to need for Raljack. Now, if you head to the back of the ship where I am right now, you're going to find that this spot actually opens up for board Raljack. Now, this option is only available to you if you have purchased the Raljack and have built it and done the quests and everything that it takes to make one. So, if you don't have that, you can still access Raljack stuff by going into your menu via the press of escape. You hit your profile, and then you go down to intrinsics. Now, what this is going to pull down is 4 different roles that you can allocate points into to enhance your abilities and performance in Raljack. There is a 5th one that is not available to us yet. It is called Command, and it is rumored to be an all AI crew oriented intrinsic, which I'm personally very, very excited for, because the rumor has it that we can use our Kuba Liches to populate our Raljack and operate as a crew. So solo play just really isn't a viable option right now. I do have a solo video which I'm going to debut as a Facebook fan group exclusive video, so if you want to see that, I'm going to put the link to that in the description. You can go subscribe to our Facebook page and check out that full solo video. But I digress. When you're progressing early on in Raljack, you're probably going to be progressing with a friend who has a new Raljack, and thus it's not going to perform well. So it's vital to the Raljack's performance that the crew is at their peak performance. Now what this means is you're going to need a good build to dish out the pain when it comes to enemies that board your ship and whatnot, but that's not as important as your intrinsics. Your intrinsics are going to be a big difference maker, and it's 50% of why Raljacks are successful in in-game. Now one thing I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to open up some of these intrinsics and recommend different things for different roles. With gunnery, you want to flip this over and you at least want to get that to rank 2 as quick as possible. It does make a tremendous difference. When you're operating your turret, you can actually have a 360 range degree of engagement, which makes a big difference between just the standard one. You're definitely going to want that. And you may want to also come down to at least rank 5, that way you can operate the forward artillery cannon. It helps pilots in order to get rid of those cruise ships, especially in late game. It's not going to be so important in the Saturn Proxima, but by the time you hit Veil Proxima, somebody's gonna need to have to operate the artillery cannon to deal with the cruise ships as quickly as possible. Going down to rank 7 is the rank that everyone is going to need to be able to access Veil Proxima. If you don't have one of these intrinsics in rank 7, you are not going to be able to access Veil Proxima, which is the end game of Raljack. So just be wary of that. Now, as most people have not done by now, Amisha is probably the only viable Archwing to date with this Raljack update, and it's going to be very important to your survival that you have Amisha. But if you don't, there is a workaround for that. In the tactical section, if you go down to rank 4, it says Recall Warp. Omni gear can be used to warp aboard the ship from anywhere. So what you're going to be doing with Gunner is you're going to be using the Archwing Warhead at rank 4. You can go to the back and the top of the ship and launch yourself into a cruise ship. Once you've sabotaged it or taken it over from the inside, you can then use your Recall Warp to warp back to the ship, and then you never have to touch Archwing at all. No other Archwing aside from Amisha is going to get the job done. There are ways, there are builds that will help you to do so, but it's still a big gamble because Archwings are so imbalanced in Raljack. So if you're a gunner and this is your role, this is what I recommend. Rank 4 in Recall Warp of Tactical, and then at least rank 2 in Gunnery. And you might be wondering, if I'm a gunner, why would I have to spend my time in tactical? Because the role of the gunner is very simple. You man the guns, and when there are cruise ships out there that are threatening your squad, you're going to deal with the cruise ships. That is your responsibility as the gunner. And when you're faced with away objectives that you have to land on an asteroid station or another ship of some sort, you're going to be the one who has to board these ships and do these objectives. So as a gunner, you're operating as the away crew, you're operating as the saboteurs. You're going to be expected to do those things, and it's a very natural process. When we were feeling out all of the different roles for Raljack, this is the most optimal conclusion, is sending the gunners out, because there's two roles that need to stay on board absolutely at all times, and that is the pilot and the engineer, which is the next ones we're going to get into. Now, as you can see, I am a rank 10 pilot, which is incredibly hard for you to reach rank 10 of anything, because it requires 500 some points, and I definitely feel as though that last perk, the ramming speed, should be buffed by digital extremes, because it needs to do a lot more damage than what it does, and sometimes the damage doesn't even register, meaning that rank 10 for this specific intrinsic just doesn't hit as hard as what the other rewards will do. So going into pilot, if you have your own Railjack and you want to be the captain of your ship and also the pilot, then you're going to need a combination of piloting, tactical, and probably some engineer. So with piloting, I think that the most important thing to go for, especially early on, is the command link of rank 3, because this will allow you to fast travel within the vessel and coordinate squad members with command interface. What I use this for is to go back to my battle forges in early game when I'm waiting for players to join, because sometimes if I'm loading into a Vel Proxima, I'm the only person in there for the first 5 minutes, and by that point I've used a little bit of flux energy, maybe I've destroyed a cruise ship, and I've used a dome charge, and I need to access the battle forges in order to build my own supplies. That being said, a pilot is also going to need some in the engineering. So the first set of intrinsic points that I would recommend pumping in is not even in piloting at all. It's within the tactical and it's within the engineering. You want to get down to at least, I would say, rank 5 of engineering. That way you can craft everything in the battle forge and you can restock yourself in the event that you just don't have an engineer on board. And a lot of people like to be engineers, but I have found that in a few cases I was left without an engineer because there were too many gunners, too many away crew, whatever. And I like to be self-sufficient. I don't like to rely on people for stuff. So I would definitely recommend this as a pilot. I would prioritize that. Now, if you go into piloting, naturally you're going to want to pump points into intrinsics for piloting. I think that you might even want some points into gunner. You may want to have access to the forward artillery, so you need to go down to rank 5 in the gunnery at least, so that way whenever you do disable a cruise ship by blowing out its engines, you can also follow it up with a forward artillery strike and kill it. Now, everything else within piloting is pretty self-explanatory. It helps with piloting. Sometimes some of these perks help with Arcwing. Like at rank 8, you get Arcwing speed increased by 20%. It's all okay, but I strongly feel like rank 10 needs a buff. I strongly feel like a lot of these things could be a lot more beneficial than what they are, but only time will tell to see if Digital Extremes rebalances this, because piloting is very, very straightforward, and you probably need to have someone operating and manning the helm at all times. Engineering is probably the most straightforward role within the entire crew. Engineering is, well, it has probably more responsibilities than any other role on the ship, because as an engineer, you're going to need to do one of 3 things, and you're going to need to be doing them pretty much at all times. You're going to need to repel boarding parties, because gunners will not be able to see enemies on their minimap when they're gunning. When you're gunning, you don't have a minimap, you don't have anything. So the engineer is the only one not going to be operating anything at any given time. So the engineer is going to be using the Omni tool to put out fires, electrical hazards, hull breaches, repelling boarding parties, and operating the battle forges and resupplying the pilot and the gunners with everything they need. Flux energy, Revelite for the Omni tool, dome charges, munitions, and I will explain those in further detail in part 2 of the Raljack series here. But for this, you don't need a whole lot in tactical. Again, I would go down to at least rank 3 in command link. That way you can warp to different areas of the ship. It makes it a lot easier to access those critical points. If there's a catastrophic failure, you can, and if it's at like the top of the ship where the pilot is, you can warp from the back of the ship where the battle forges are to that area, repair it, and get back to your station as quickly as possible. Now, what I'm going to do for the rest of this video is recommend specific warframes that help these roles be more efficient in what they do.
Thank you.
This is Wisp, a phantom from a forgotten era. The stalker of the unholy. The ammunition in the war effort. The coup de grace in the final strike. Wisp is a frame that's buffs translate into everything you do in Raljack. Using her first ability and alternating between them means that the buffs will stick on you no matter what you're doing within the Raljack mode, and as I've stated in the Warframe God Build Spectre series, I would rather use Wisp as a Spectre, but I cannot deny the fact that she is a very effective gunner and support frame. She can even operate as an engineer because of her speed within the ship. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you a build that's going to work very well for you in Raljack. Now with her, I'm using a combination of Arcane Guardian and Arcane Grace with a corrosive projection in my aura slot, Prime Continuity for ability duration, Stretch for ability range, Streamline for the efficiency and vitality for her health, Umbral Intensify for more strength, Blind Rage again for more strength, ability duration and Augur Message, and then Prime Flow for energy max. If I recall correctly, I don't think anything has changed with this setup between the initial god builds that I did for her and the Raljack setup that I'm doing. However, the weapons have. With this new event, the Scarlet Spear, I have picked up the Basmu, and I feel as though it complements Wisp very well because the only issue she may have in combat is having some of that big health pool be drained. So for the Basmu, I am using the Point Strike for critical chance, Vital Sense for critical damage, Argon Scope when you hit a headshot, you have additional critical chance, Serration for damage, Split Chamber for multi-shot, Hunter Munitions to apply Slash status, which will bleed enemies out when you hit a crit, Rhyme Rounds and Malignant Force to produce your viral combination. I'm not using anything special for my secondary. I've just gone with Euphona Prime because I feel as though damage is probably the most useful to Wisp in this situation. So with Euphona Prime, I am using Barrel Diffusion for the 120% multi-shot, Lethal Torrent for the fire rate and also more multi-shot, Hornet Strike for damage, Prime Pistol Gambit for critical chance, Pistol Pestilence and Frostbite, Scorch and Jolt. This is going to be producing a viral and radiation combination, good for kicking Grineer where the sun don't shine. And then Haruto is a great melee weapon that will replenish your health upon a critical strike. So with Brutal Tide it is your stance, Blood Rush for the combo, or the critical chance which stacks with the combo multiplier, Prime Fever Strike, Body Count for combo duration, Prime Pressure Point for melee damage, Prime Fury for attack speed, Organ Shatter for critical damage, Berserker to a boost, more of your attack speed, and Shocking Touch. For companions, I recommend that you use a Moa Spectre, which is spec'd for CC. So the biggest assets that you're going to be using with the Moa companion is the anti-grav grenade and the whiplash mine. You're also going to be using coolant leak, that way if you get too close to an enemy, they are CC'd. Prime Animal Instinct so you can see everything on the map, Shield Charger, Meta Pet Kit, Link Health, Meta Ray, Vacuum, and Link Armor. As stated before, Wisp can fulfill any role that you're looking to do within the Raljack. The best things that she does is of course supplying the team with her first ability, but also being a good gunner, an away party strategist, and an engineer. So use her wisely and you will find that the Raljack is in your favor. This is Vauban, the scientist, the genius, the ultimate strategist, the gadget master. Vauban is primarily spec'd for CC, and he does that incredibly well. In fact, if you don't have a Wisp present, Vauban would be my essential go-to. He is excellent at repelling boarding parties because his ultimate, rather it be Bastille or Vortex, will trap them in one area, rendering them unable to do anything. Vauban, with the implementation of a speed enhancement of some sort, is going to be an amazing asset as an engineer role. He can do gunner roles as long as he's not stressed out as an engineer, but I would primarily focus on him as an engineer because that is the role that he best suits. Just keep in mind when you are looking at this build that you may change this up a little bit differently. You may put on a running speed mod in favor of handspring instead, if you do not have the warp ability in the tactical intrinsic. I have the warp ability, so I don't worry about getting from place to place on my ship. I am using Energy Siphon, Handspring, Prime Continuity, Constitution, Repelling Bastille, Overextended, Stretch, Vitality, Streamline, and Prime Flow. My arcane enhancements are again Arcane Grace and Arcane Guardian. I want to be able to survive in long haul with my Vauban, and for that reason, this build is lacking in damage, as Vauban with his entire kit is, so it's going to be vital to us that we build an appropriate set of weapons in order to deal with Sentience or Grenier at this point in the game. For that, I am using the Kuva Comb. We are very lucky to have a Kuva Lich update, in which every time we down a Larveling, we can see which Kuva weapon they're going to drop, and in this case I went for the Kuva Comb, and I'm using Shell Shock, Toxic Barrage, Scattering Inferno, Vigilant Armaments, Prime Shotgun Ammo Mutation, and you're gonna need that because this thing runs through ammo very quickly, Hell's Chamber, Frail Momentum to help with the spool up of the gun, Shotgun Spaz, again helping with spool up, and then Prime Point Blank. If you build all of this the way that I have built it here, you are going to see incredible damage numbers, and this is going to be your go-to damage for Vauban. Sonic Ore may not be the most decisive weapon for Vauban because it primarily does in CC as well, but I like to have failsafes in place, and Sonic Ore is really good CC, so for Sonic Ore I'm using Deep Freeze, Lethal Torrent, Pummel, Primed Heated Charge, Pathogen Rounds, Convulsion, Barrel Diffusion, and Hornet Strike. Again, not necessarily spec towards damage, it's in those instances where I'm in an emergency situation, I'm out of energy, and I need to CC things. This is going to CC things not as good as his powers will, but it's reliable nonetheless. For melees, I am using the Sarpa because, well, it can shoot as well, and it doesn't have to worry about ammunition at all. So with Bullet Dance, Shattering Impact, Voltic Strike, Prime Fever Strike, Prime Pressure Point, Condition Overload, Sacrificial Steel, Virulent Scourge, and Berserker. All of these mods make for a really excellent damaging melee, and it can also be used to fight Eidolon in the Plains of Eidolon, stripping them of their armor. So just keep that in mind in case, you know, I come up with a squad build that teaches you how to hunt Eidolon in the most efficient way. What I love to do with the companion version of this loadout is use the Helios Prime and make sure that I'm allowing my companion to use the Investigator mod, because if enemies are CC'd and they can attack, that is a perfect time to scan them. That's what your siphons do when you're hunting for Cephalon and Samaris, is, you know, CC, and then you scan those vital points. You can do this with any enemy, and you can learn about them in your codex in the Universe tab, and then see what they drop. So this is really good setup for scanning unknown enemies. You can learn a lot about them from that, and you know, the Helios is kind of like your Pokédex in Pokemon. You have your targeting receptor, Prime Animal Instinct, Metal Fiber, Sanctuary, Detect Vulnerability, Investigator, Meta Ray, Enhanced Vitality, Calculated Redirection, and Prime Regen. That concludes the setup for Vauban, and if you implement it the way I have shown you, you will do wonders for your team as an engineer, and you should never be stressed out. This is Wukong, the wild, the fury, the tenacious, the rapid damage. With such a Warframe, you can always rely that Wukong will have his own back. And I will say that as an Excalibur main myself, I would resort to using Excalibur Umbra in place of Wukong. However, Wukong, by default, can clone himself and allow the Celestial Twin to use your loadout to fight off enemies. I would use Wukong for piloting, or I would alternatively use Excalibur Umbra for piloting. The reason why I would choose Umbra is because you can jump out into your operator, pilot your ship with the operator, and let Umbra guard your back, because it will serve as like an NPC that will shoot anything that comes into the piloting room. This is assuming that the engineer has not done their job and has not repelled boarding parties. This is also assuming that the gunners have not done this as well, and in that case, there are instances in which enemies make their way up to the pilot's area and they'll attack you and probably down you while you're piloting. So I would, just in case, bring a Wukong or an Excalibur Umbra. That way you always have someone guarding your back. With Wukong, I have built a setup that is very competent of that situation. You have your Still Charge, your Handspring, Umbral Vitality, Umbral Intensity, Prime Flow, Primal Rage, Gladiator Resolve, Gladiator Aegis, Prime Continuity, Adaption, and then for your Arcane enhancements you have Arcane Avenger and Arcane Guardian. The weapons are probably going to be the most important part of this setup, and hence why I have chosen to use Ferox, because I find that I am not as accurate as the Celestial Twin version of me is. So what I like to do is I like to become the Celestial Twin, melee, and then get on the pilot stick. Now, because the Celestial Twin will be guarding your back with Ferox, you're going to want to use Split Chamber, Amalgam Serration, Stormbringer, Malignant Force, Hammer Shot, Vital Sense, Rhyme Rounds, and Vile Acceleration. I've really relied on the Celestial Twin to annihilate things with this weapon, and it has done me wonders. The secondaries aren't that big of a deal, but I would bring Axe Stiletto Prime with Convulsion, Lethal Torrent, Hornet Strike, Pathogen Rounds, Pistol Pestilence, Prime Pistol Ammo Mutation, Barrel Diffusion, and Primed Heated Charge. You can put an Exilus in this gun and then move your Prime Pistol Ammo Mutation there. That way you can grab something else for damage from down here, and I would recommend doing that. I just haven't done that because I do not use my secondaries when I'm using Wukong. Possibly the most important part of this loadout is your melee, because this is going to be the weapon that you are using to fend off boarding parties or sentient threats via the sentient ship, and that is the Legion. I'm using Shimmering Blight, Prime Fury, Prime Pressure Point, Virulent Scourge, Voltic Strike, Condition Overload, Drifting Contact, Vicious Frost, and Volcanic Edge. This weapon has been top tier and has never left it. To my knowledge, it's never been nerfed and it's never been buffed. As soon as it entered the game, it was just good all around, and it never stopped being good, it never stopped being reliable, and with the usage of status mods instead of crit, as you would normally build, it does definitely pack a tremendous punch. Now for your companion, I'm actually using the latest Vampire Kavat, and maybe I might benefit from a Kavat that grants me crits a little bit more, but I would like to have a Kavat that can drain life for itself and possibly me. So Prime Animal Instinct is a staple for any companion that you use, also with Bite and Maul, Sharpened Claws, Draining Bite, Transfusion, Swipe, Link Armor, Link Health, and Fetch. And yet again, I say that I would use Wukong or Excalibur Umbra exclusively as the pilot. It can fit the role of a gunner if you join somebody's lobby and you want to be a gunner, but I would primarily stick to using this as a pilot. Rhino Prime, the warrior draped in gold trim, the titan with the extra damage to boost. With his chrome finish and his piercing attitude, there's no way that any capital ship can take down a Raljack and just assume that the fight is over with the destruction of the Raljack. Any team using Rhino Prime is gonna have a say in the fight long after that team is defeated. Rhino Prime is without a doubt the biggest muscle of any Raljack's group. If you build for power strength, which doubles as an Eidolon hunter, you can cast your Roar, which will boost everyone's damage output. This helps with gunners, this helps with weapons, this helps with just about everything. So for this build I am using Deadeye because I have a sniper in my primary, Coaction Drift for Aura Strength, again boosting the damage of the sniper, and the arcane enhancements also have to do with the sniper, other than Arcane Nullifier, which is immunity to the radiation effects of Eidolon hunting. Again, I want to stress the importance of this doubling as an Eidolon hunt build, so that is why I'm using the mods that I'm using, and you don't need to change them in order to be a proper Raljack enthusiast. I use Narrow-Minded, Rolling Guard, Transient Fortitude, Blind Range, Umbral Intensify, Prime Flow, Rage, and Vitality. The only mod that really needs explained in this setup is the Rolling Guard. Sometimes you will be vulnerable after your Iron Skin falls off. I use the Rolling Guard in instances in which the Eidolon is releasing the EMP blast, and I also use Rolling Guard when I notice that my Iron Skin has fallen off. That way I have time to cast Iron Skin and put it back on. So Rolling Guard is something I feel needs to be used universally no matter what you're doing as a Rhino player. As I stated before, I am using a sniper. I am using the Rubico Prime. You could choose to roll with a Vectis Prime if you wanted to, but I'm going to be using Hellfire, Stormbringer, Serration with Vigilante supplies in the Exila slot, Point Strike, Vital Sense, Heavy Caliber, and Split Chamber. I also have a Riven mod set up for this, but if I were to replace it with anything, I would most likely replace it with a Hammer Shot, which will provide you 60% critical damage and 80% status chance. Neil is another weapon that I use for Eidolon hunting primarily, but the best feature about this gun is the fact that when you hit a headshot, you essentially capitalize on unlimited ammo for an X amount of time. Now, the skin for this is incredibly sexy, I feel, but we're not covering aesthetics, we are covering damage. So with this, I am using Prime Target Cracker, Hornet Strike, Barrel Diffusion, Auger Pact, Anemic Agility, Scorch, and Prime Pistol Gambit. Again, I have another Riven for this to do as much damage as possible, but you can replace this with Hollow Point, which is going to do more critical damage. As you very well know by now, or should know, when there is an anomaly detected in the Veil Proxima, you're going to need the Paracesis to trigger the next quest line, which is going to do a cinematic quest and show you the next part of the story. And with Paracesis, I can honestly say that it's probably the hardest hitting melee in the game right now, so you would be a fool not to be using it. Tempo Royale is definitely the stance to go to with this thing. Prime Fury, Prime Fever Strike, Sacrificial Pressure, Sacrificial Steel, Shocking Touch, Gladiator Might, and Blood Rush. If I didn't have a Riven present with this build, I would probably replace that Riven with Body Count, as I need a little bit more combo duration in order to capitalize on Blood Rush. So just be wary of that when you are building for Paracesis. Not everyone is going to have access to Rivens of these nature. For companions, I would definitely be using a Crit Cat in order to Eidolon hunt, but there are a couple of disadvantages with that. A, there needs to be an Incubator Update 3.0 to allow us to have any of our pets out of stasis, and in our active loadouts at any point in time. Otherwise, you're confined to using only one Kavat or one Kubro at a time, which I think was really bullshit from the very beginning. However, with this setup in Raljack, I would primarily focus on using Jin, and the reason for that being is because it has a unique mod called Reawaken, in which upon death it will automatically revive itself after 90 seconds. It's the only companion in the game right now that can continuously revive itself over and over and over again with very minor flaws to it. Fatal Attraction also helps enemies to just outright stop shooting and walk towards you in a stupid daze. Enhanced Vitality, Calculated Redirection, Sacrifice, Vacuum, Prime Animal Instinct, Thumper, Self-Destruct, and Meta Ray are going to complement Rhino the most in this entire setup, and again, this is another Warframe that I use primarily for gunning, but really he can do anything within the ship. Rhino is super tanky, super strong. There's no way anyone is going to have an easy time bringing him down. The only thing that you really need to worry about with him is just making sure that you buff the appropriate squad mates at the appropriate time. It's always a good idea to keep the pilot buffed, but in situations where you're accompanying an away squad, maybe you're the wingman to a squad member who's doing away missions, like a Wisp or a Vauban, then it's a good idea to buff them and also keep them safe as well. Kind of escort them to the objectives and make sure that the objectives get completed. I view Rhino Prime as the Secret Service for the President. He's going to be essential in supporting the team, but also dealing the hard, heavy damage for the team as well, rather it be in the gunner seat or outright taking on threats by himself. He's good at sabotaging cruise ships when he gets in. He's good at repelling boarders. He's just really good at keeping things dead, and that's going to be vital to the team, especially in early gameplay. You're going to need someone who is reliable and just won't go down. So I would stress that you would occupy the gunner role and just try to maintain your other players as the Rhino role, because he is the OG of the Warframe series. He's the original tank, and he's going to be very reliable. I would replace him with Hildren if you just don't like Rhino or don't have him, because Hildren can supply the same type of benefits minus the damage output buffs. She will increase everyone's shields on board, and she won't go down herself because she's very, very strong. Other than that, I would probably use Grendel, because Grendel can CC everything. He can just put it all in his belly, jump out of the ship, go into a cruise ship, and spit everybody else up on board the cruise ship. Grendel's a really good frame all around, and I would definitely suit your second gunner as a tank. And that concludes the roles that you will play as Warframe Raljack squads. There isn't much else that needs to be said about Raljack. It's a really fun mode that has made Warframe a lot more fun and engaging to play in recent months, and especially with COVID-19 going around, it's a good time to get back into Warframe and start grinding because, well, Raljack is pretty fun, in my opinion, and I think that if you're using it properly, it's going to be fun for you too, which, if it is fun and you have learned something from this video, I always encourage you to hit like, subscribe, comment, share it to your friends, and also consider joining our clan on PC, as we are looking for a variety of new rules, and we are building up our dojo, and 2020 is going to be a year of tremendous gains for us, as not only are we doing big things within the clan, but I am doing big things on my YouTube channel. I have a few web series specials that I am working on very diligently. We've been having solid progress towards them. They're going to be complete with voiceover acting, special effects, the whole 9 yards. Everything that I announced way back in 2018 is finally being worked on here in 2020. So you, as the player, can join our clan and become involved in that in some way, some shape, some capacity. Also, again, with the roles of the clan, you can come in and become a member and have your own room with the dojo in which you can decorate it as you see fit, because we are performing a big, massive, expansive, decorative party, and we just need more active clan members in our game. So many people have left Warframe and not come back. So not only should you like, share, comment, subscribe, but you should also check out the other endeavors on this YouTube page. I do a lot of speed paints, and all of those speed paints, or the good bulk of them, cover original Exidium characters. Exidium characters from the Exidium universe, my unique storytelling. Out of my trilogy, out of my universe. If it's something you're interested in, it's definitely something that I'm going to gear you towards. So, until next time, until part 2 at least, I will see you guys soon, and again, I'm hoping that COVID-19 doesn't last all that much longer, and we can go back to life as normal, and until then, just try to keep our hopes up and stick together. So, thanks for watching, and until next time, this has been Vance, signing out. Peace.